Dear Diary, August 2nd, 2023. I can't shake off the shivers that still crawl down my spine as I sit here, penning down the events of the night that will forever be etched into the darkest corners of my mind. Every time I close my eyes, I am transported back to that forsaken gas station, the chilling wind that danced with the rustling leaves and the all-encompassing dread that gripped my heart in its icy claws. It's as if the horrors of that night have permanently etched their presence into my soul. It all began when my car sputtered to a stop on that desolate stretch of road far from any signs of life. The sky was cloaked in a thick blanket of obsidian, not a single star daring to pierce through the heavy clouds. My cell phone, cursed with a battery life as short-lived as my bad luck, had died just minutes earlier. Panic began to weave its tendrils through my mind, entwining itself with the reality of my situation. With no other choice, I set out on foot, hoping to find some form of help or civilization in this forgotten corner of the world. My footsteps echoed in the silence, creating an eerie symphony of isolation. As I walked, the only source of light came from the flickering neon sign in the distance. A gas station. Its windows shattered and its paint peeling stood like a solitary sentinel against the encroaching darkness. The air was heavy with the stench of decay that seemed to cling to the very walls of the building. I hesitated, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, but desperation compelled me to continue. The old door creaked open with an agonizing groan as if protesting my intrusion. The interior was suffocating, illuminated only by a single dim bulb that cast long, distorted shadows across the grimy wooden floor. Shelves that were once stocked with snacks and supplies now stood barren, like the skeletal remains of a once thriving life. My footsteps echoed ominously as I navigated the narrow aisles, searching for any sign of life or a working phone. The unsettling feeling of being watched clung to me like a second skin, and every rustle and creak seemed to echo with malicious intent. A sudden, spine-chilling gust of wind blew through the broken windows, extinguishing the feeble light bulb. I was plunged into a darkness so thick that it felt almost tangible, wrapping around me like a malevolent shroud. My heart raced as I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, praying that it miraculously still held a spark of life. The screen remained lifeless, mocking my futile hope. As the darkness pressed in, I could hear a soft, guttural whispering all around me. It was as if the very walls were murmuring secrets they had harbored for years. My breath hitched in my throat, and I stumbled backward, crashing into a shelf and sending a cascade of long-forgotten products crashing to the floor. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, and I felt a cold, clammy breath on the back of my neck. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest, and was met with a sight that froze me in my tracks. A figure, clad in tattered rags that seemed to meld with the shadows, stood before me. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were hollow voids that seemed to swallow all light. A guttural, otherworldly sound emanated from its form, and I felt a wave of nauseating terror wash over me. I wanted to run, to flee from this abominable apparition, but my legs were rooted to the spot. The whispering grew deafening, filling every corner of my mind, and I clutched my head in my hands as if trying to block out the invading presence. The figure advanced, its movements disjointed and unnatural like a marionette being pulled by invisible strings. In that heart-stopping moment, my vision blurred, the world around me spinning and warping until finally darkness claimed me. When I awoke, I was back in my car, the morning sun casting a gentle glow over the world outside. The gas station was nowhere to be seen, as if it had been swallowed by the earth itself. My heart still raced, my body drenched in a cold sweat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the horrors I had experienced were more than just a dream. As I sit here now, I am haunted by the chilling certainty that what I encountered was no mere nightmare. It was a glimpse into the realm of terror that exists on the fringes of our reality. A place where darkness and malevolence converge in a symphony of unspeakable dread. I can only hope that I am the sole witness to such horrors, that the gas station remains lost in the abyss where it rightfully belongs. But the whispering lingers in the recesses of my mind, a constant reminder that some nightmares are far too real to be easily forgotten. This will be my last diary entry. If you are reading this, I believe the curse has now been passed on to you. October 15th, 2003. I can hardly bear to put pen to paper, but I must document the events of tonight before the terror consumes me entirely. My hands tremble as I write, and I can feel the cold sweat trickling down my spine. I never believed in the supernatural, but what transpired in the last few hours defies all rational explanation. It began innocently enough. A quiet evening at home on Willow Street. The autumn winds whispered through the trees, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I sat by the fireplace, the crackling flames providing a sense of comfort against the encroaching darkness. But little did I know that comfort was about to be brutally shattered. As the clock struck midnight, an unsettling chill spread through the air. I dismissed it as a mere draft, attempting to quell the unease that was already gnawing at my senses. The quiet was punctuated by the occasional hoot of an owl and the distant rustle of leaves. I convinced myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then came the whispers. At first it was soft, barely audible, a mere murmur in the background of my thoughts. I strained to make out the words, but they remained just out of reach, like ghosts lingering on the edges of reality. I shook my head, attributing it to exhaustion, to the weariness that had settled into my bones. However, the whispers grew stronger, more insistent. They clawed at the edges of my mind, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from all directions at once. Panic knotted my stomach, and I scrambled to my feet, desperate to escape the haunting symphony that now enveloped me. I stumbled through the darkened hallway, my heart pounding in my chest like a relentless drumbeat. The whispers seemed to follow me, echoing off the walls, each voice distinct yet incomprehensible. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I clutched at the collar of my shirt as if it were my only lifeline. I reached the door, flinging it open and stumbling onto the porch. The night air was frigid against my skin, but I welcomed the sensation, hoping it would drown out the maddening chorus in my head. My eyes scanned the empty street, my pulse quickening as I realized the whispers were not contained within the walls of my home. They were all around me. The very air seemed to vibrate with their intensity, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. The once familiar surroundings now felt foreign, twisted by an invisible force that defied reason. I staggered down the steps, my vision blurred by tears of fear and frustration. And then I saw her. A woman. Her figure obscured by shadows, stood at the end of the street. Her long, disheveled hair seemed to writhe like serpents,
and her eyes gleamed with an unnatural light that sent shivers down my spine. I opened my mouth to call out, to demand answers, but my voice caught in my throat, stifled by an unrelenting terror. The woman began to move towards me, her steps slow and deliberate, her gaze never leaving mine. I felt like prey, caught in the sights of a predator, paralyzed by the sheer malevolence that radiated from her very being. My instinct screamed at me to flee, to escape the nightmare that was unfolding before me, but my limbs felt heavy and unresponsive. With each step she took, the whispers grew louder, their voices intertwining with a haunting melody that seemed to seep into my very soul. My head throbbed, and I pressed my hands against my ears, desperate to shout the infernal chorus. But it was futile. The whispers had become a part of me, an unending torment that threatened to consume my sanity. As the woman drew closer, her features became more distinct, and I recoiled in horror. Her eyes, empty voids that held no trace of humanity, bore into mine with an intensity that sent a jolt of pure terror coursing through my veins. I felt as if I were being stripped bare, with thoughts exposed to her gaze, and I knew with a sickening certainty that she was not of this world. I turned and fled, my feet carrying me as far away from that accursed street as possible. The whispers followed me, taunting me with their unintelligible words, their sinister laughter echoing in the recesses of my mind. My breath came in ragged gasps, my chest burning as if it were being constricted by an invisible vice. I write this now, huddled in a corner of a dimly lit motel room, my mind teetering on the precipice of madness. The terror has not abated. If anything, it has intensified. The whispers growing louder, more malicious. I fear that I am forever marked by the encounter, that the woman's malevolent presence has latched onto me like a parasite, feeding on my fear and despair. I know not what she is or what she wants, but one thing is certain. My life will never be the same. The whispers continue to haunt me, a constant reminder of the unspeakable horrors I have witnessed. I can only hope that by documenting my ordeal, I can somehow find solace and perhaps warn others of the malevolent force that lurks on Willow Street. Unfortunately, if you are reading this, I'm sorry, but I believe the curse has now been passed on to you.
July 24th, 1998. The date is inconsequential, for time seemed to lose all meaning in the abysmal depths. It began as a simple scuba diving expedition, an adventure that I had eagerly anticipated. The sun sparkled on the surface of the water as I descended into the fathomless darkness, the pressure of the ocean embracing me like a suffocating shroud. The world beneath the waves was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Bioluminescent creatures danced before my eyes, casting an ethereal glow over the jagged rocks and swirling seaweed. It was a mesmerizing spectacle, a glimpse into a world that remained hidden from the eyes of most. But the enchantment was short-lived. A feeling of unease began to gnaw at me, a primal instinct that something was amiss. The water seemed to grow colder, more oppressive, as if the very depths were conspiring against my presence. I brushed aside the unease attributing it to the isolation and the unfamiliarity of my surroundings. And then I heard it, the faintest whisper of movement, a soft disturbance that cut through the silence like a blade. My heart quickened its pace, and I turned my head, searching for the source of the disturbance. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. A shadowy figure loomed in the distance, its elongated form an unnatural silhouette against my dark expanse. My flashlight beam revealed only fragments of its features. A glimpse of scales that seemed to absorb the feeble light, eyes that gleamed with an otherworldly malevolence. Panic surged through me, a primal fear that gripped my very core. I knew instinctively that this was a creature not of this world, a predator of the abyss that had never encountered a human before. Its movements were deliberate, calculated, as it circled me with a predatory curiosity that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to steady my breathing, to appear non-threatening, but the creature's gaze bore into me like a vice. My heart raced, and I felt the weight of the ocean pressing down on me, a reminder of my vulnerability in this hostile environment. I was an intruder, an unwelcome guest in a world that belonged to creatures of unfathomable power. With a sudden burst of movement, the creature closed the distance between us, its teeth gleaming like daggers. Panic seized me and I kicked against the water, desperate to escape the advancing horror. But my movements only seemed to incite its curiosity, and it pursued me with relentless determination. The abyss seemed to close in around me, a suffocating void that threatened to swallow me whole. My oxygen supply dwindled, each gasp of air a precious commodity that I could not afford to squander. The creature weaved through the water, a relentless pursuer that seemed to anticipate my every move. As I swam, I searched for an escape, a sanctuary from the terror that pursued me. And then a narrow crevice appeared before me, a rocky passage that promised a temporary respite. With a surge of adrenaline, I swam towards it, the rocks scraping against my equipment as I squeezed into the narrow opening. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest as the creature hovered just outside the crevice. Its eyes bore into me, a silent challenge that spoke of an intelligence beyond my comprehension. For agonizing moments, we remained locked in a silent standoff, the abysmal depths serving as the backdrop to our primal struggle. And then, as abruptly as it had appeared, the creature turned and vanished into darkness. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the ocean. My body trembled and I remained in the crevice for what felt like an eternity, gathering my wits and summoning the courage to continue my ascent. With each stroke towards the surface, I felt a renewed appreciation for the light of the sun, the embrace of the open air. The encounter with the abysmal creature had left an indelible mark on my psyche, a chilling reminder that there are depths of terror lurking beneath the waves that no human should ever have to encounter. It was a chilly autumn evening when my friends and I embarked on a weekend getaway to the Whispering Woods mansion. Nestled deep within a forest shrouded in mist, the mansion was rumoured to be haunted, a place where the living and the dead coexisted in an eerie dance. We were sceptical, dismissing the tales as mere folklore, eager to experience a thrilling adventure. As we arrived at the mansion, its imposing facade stood before us, cloaked in an unsettling silence. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a whispered promise of secrets and mysteries long forgotten. The caretaker, an elderly man with eyes that held a hint of sorrow, greeted us with a somber smile. He warned us of the mansion's history, of the tragedies that had befallen those who had dared to cross its threshold. Undeterred, we ventured inside, our footsteps echoing in the dimly lit hallway. The air was thick with an oppressive heaviness, and a sense of foreboding settled over us like a shroud. The grandeur of the mansion was undeniable, yet it was marred by an unsettling energy that seemed to seep through the walls. Night fell, and we gathered in the grand hall, our laughter masking the unease that gnawed at our senses. The fireplace crackled, casting dancing shadows that seemed to come to life, their movements defying the laws of nature. We dismissed the phenomenon as a trick of the light, determined to enjoy our weekend escape. As the clock struck midnight, a hush fell over us, an unspoken understanding that the mansion held secrets that were about to be unveiled. The temperature dropped, and a chill pervaded the air, causing our breath to materialize in ghostly tendrils. It was then that we heard it. The faintest whispering, a symphony of disembodied voices that seemed to echo from the very walls themselves. Fear crept into our hearts as we exchanged anxious glances. The whispers grew louder, their words indistinct yet laden with a sense of urgency. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, the atmosphere charged with an otherworldly presence that defied explanation. A gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through us and we fumbled for flashlights, the beams cutting through the shadows like knives. And then, in the flickering light, we saw her. A woman, her form ethereal and translucent, standing at the center of the room. Her eyes held a sorrow that pierced our very souls, her gaze an unspoken plea for understanding. The whispers grew deafening, a cacophony of voices that seemed to entwine with her presence. It was as if the very walls were recounting the tales of heartache and despair, of lives lost and souls trapped in an eternal purgatory. Frozen in terror, we watched as the woman's form began to waver, her figure blurring as if torn between the realms of the living and the dead. And then, with the mournful wail that echoed through the mansion, she dissipated, leaving behind an emptiness that was as profound as it was haunting. The whispers ceased, replaced by an unsettling stillness that settled over us like a heavy fog. We fled the mansion, our hearts pounding, our minds reeling from the supernatural encounter. As we reached the safety of the forest, we turned to look back at the Whispering Woods mansion, its windows aglow with an otherworldly light. But then a realization struck us like a thunderbolt, a realization that shattered the very foundation of our understanding. The mansion was not haunted by the dead. It was haunted by the living, by the souls of those who had been lured into its depths and trapped in a cycle of torment and anguish. The woman, the whispers, they were not remnants of the past. They were the desperate cries of souls trapped in a nightmarish existence. We were the intruders, the unwitting participants in a sinister ritual that fed on our fear and despair. The mansion had consumed countless lives, and we had narrowly escaped becoming yet another entry in its dark history.
As we stood there, our hearts heavy with the weight of the revelation, a chilling wind swept through the trees. The mansion loomed before us, a malevolent presence that seemed to mock our feeble attempts to escape its grasp. We realized that our lives would never be the same, that the horrors we had witnessed were but a glimpse into the true darkness that lay within the Whispering Woods mansion. The true horror, the true terror, was the revelation that the mansion itself was a sentient entity, a malevolent force that preyed on the living, ensnaring their souls in an eternal nightmare. I'm still not quite sure if we made it out. Everything feels different now, like I'm somehow stuck in those walls. I don't even know if this is real life anymore, or if this is just something I'm imagining. I have a strange feeling that I'm now nothing but a tortured soul, trapped inside those dreaded walls with nothing to do but scream for eternity. A scream that translates to nothing more than a whisper to those who hear it.
Every evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, I would embark on a familiar routine, taking my dog Rufus for a leisurely stroll through the quiet neighborhood lanes. The night air was crisp, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft paddling of Rufus's paws against the pavement. It was our bonding time, a moment of tranquility in an otherwise chaotic world. Little did I know that one fateful night would shatter our routine and plunge us into a nightmare beyond comprehension. It was a motionless night, the darkness enveloping us like a shroud as we set out on our walk. The usual sense of calm was replaced by an unsettling unease, a feeling that we were being watched by unseen eyes. Rufus seemed to share my apprehension. His ears perked, his tail held high in a defensive stance. As we walked deeper into the alley, the streetlights became sparse, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of my vision. I shook off the sense of paranoia, attributing it to an overactive imagination. But then I heard it. A faint whisper. A hushed voice that seemed to emanate from the very darkness itself. "Come closer." The voice seemed to beckon, its tone a chilling blend of seduction and malice. My heart quickened its pace, and I tightened Rufus's leash, urging him to stay close. My gaze darted around, searching for the source of the voice, but the darkness remained impenetrable, its secrets concealed from prying eyes. I quickened our pace, my footsteps echoing in the silence as I desperately tried to put distance between us and the unseen presence. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more insistent. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, a malevolent force that sought to ensnare us in its clutches. "Come closer," the voice repeated, its words now laced with a sinister command. Fear coiled around my heart, its icy grip threatening to crush me. The voice seemed to burrow into my mind, its tendrils of influence wrapping around my thoughts like a suffocating embrace. Rufus whined, his hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his throat as he sensed the danger that eluded my grasp. And then, with a sudden burst of movement, the darkness before us seemed to coalesce,
forming a shadowy figure that stood before us. A being of pure malevolence, its eyes twin orbs of crimson that glowed with a wicked intensity. Its form was twisted, its features contorted into a grotesque parody of humanity. "Come closer," it hissed, its voice a cacophony of whispers that seemed to resonate within my very bones. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my mind struggling to comprehend the horror that stood before me. Rufus lunged, his teeth bared, a primal fury that defied explanation, but the creature merely laughed. A chilling, inhuman sound that reverberated through the night. It extended a skeletal hand, its fingers elongated and gnarled, beckoning me to approach. My breath caught in my throat, my instincts warring with the unnatural compulsion that seemed to emanate from the creature's very presence. "No," I managed to whisper, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and defiance. The creature's eyes gleamed with a malevolent amusement, its twisted smile widening as if it relished the struggle that raged within me. And then, with a sudden burst of movement, it lunged, its fingers grazing my arm, a touch that sent a searing pain coursing through my veins. I screamed, a sound that pierced the darkness, a desperate plea for help that seemed to fall on deaf ears. Rufus lunged again, his teeth finding purchase in the creature's shadowy form, but the creature merely dissolved, its laughter echoing in the void as if it were a mere illusion. Rufus and I were left alone, the darkness seeming to swallow the creature whole. The pain in my arm subsided, replaced by a numbing chill that seemed to spread through my very being. Rufus whined, his tail tucked between his legs, his gaze locked on the empty space where the creature had stood. With trembling hands, I turned and fled, my heart pounding, my mind reeling from the supernatural encounter. Rufus followed close behind, his presence a comfort in the face of the inexplicable terror that had befallen us. As we reached the safety of our home, I collapsed onto the couch, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a nightmarish loop. The whisper, the creature, its touch, all of it defied rational explanation, leaving me grappling with a reality that had been forever shattered. And so, as I sit here, the darkness pressing in on all sides, I can't help but wonder what unspeakable horrors lurk just beyond the veil of our understanding. The night walk with Rufus had exposed me to a realm of otherworldly terror, a realm that defied explanation and reason. And as the whispers continue to haunt my thoughts, I can't shake the feeling that the nightmare is far from over, that the creature's malevolent laughter still echoes in the corners of my mind, a chilling reminder of a darkness that has forever altered the course of my reality. Hang on. Rufus? Rufus? Rufus, where are you, boy? Rufus? Rufus? I can't find Rufus. Rufus? Rufus?
It was a night like any other. The darkness outside my window shrouding the world in a cloak of stillness. I had settled into bed, exhaustion tugging at my senses after a long day. As my eyelids grew heavy and sleep began to claim me, I had no inkling of the horrors that awaited me in the depths of the night. I awoke in a room that was not my own. Panic gripped me, a primal fear that surged through my veins as I struggled to make sense of my surroundings. The air was cold and sterile, the walls illuminated by an eerie, otherworldly glow. I tried to move, to flee from this alien place, but my body felt strangely disconnected, as if I were floating in a void. And then they appeared, beings unlike anything I had ever seen. The forms were alien, their features a grotesque blend of unfamiliar shapes and textures. Their eyes held an intelligence that was both mesmerizing and unsettling, a gaze that seemed to penetrate my very soul. I was paralyzed, a captive audience to their invasive examination. They moved around me with an unsettling precision, a touch cold and clinical. I could feel their presence in my mind, a probing intrusion that left me feeling exposed, vulnerable. Time seemed to stretch and warp, an endless procession of probing and examination. I was subjected to a barrage of sensations, strange lights flashing before my eyes, eerie sounds that seemed to resonate within my very bones. They delved into the recesses of my memories, extracting fragments of my life with a dispassionate curiosity that chilled me to the core. As the ordeal continued, a sense of hopelessness settled over me. I was powerless, a mere pawn in their enigmatic agenda. And then, with a sudden jolt, I found myself back in my own bed. The memory of the encounter a vivid and haunting presence in my mind. Days turned into nights, and I struggled to come to terms with the terror that had befallen me. The world around me felt different, distorted, as if the very fabric of reality had been torn asunder. I began to question my own sanity, doubting the veracity of my own memories. And then one night it happened again. I awoke in the same sterile room, the alien beings once more descending upon me with their inscrutable purpose. This time, however, I felt a surge of anger, a primal instinct to fight back against the invasion of my mind and body. With every ounce of willpower, I resisted their probing, their attempts to unravel the mysteries of my existence. The room seemed to tremble, the alien surroundings distorting and warping in response to my defiance. And then, with a blinding flash of light, I was back in my own bed. The encounter, once again a haunting memory etched into my consciousness. Days turned into nights, and I became consumed by an obsession to uncover the truth behind these otherworldly abductions. I delved into research, scouring the depths of the internet and poring over ancient texts that spoke of extraterrestrial encounters. The more I learned, the clearer it became that I was not alone in my experiences. It was during one of my late-night research sessions that I stumbled upon a revelation that shook me to my core. The beings that had abducted me were not mere visitors from another world. They were interdimensional travelers, entities that existed beyond the boundaries of time and space. They had a purpose, a mission that spanned eons, and I was somehow entwined in their enigmatic agenda. With newfound determination,
I began to experiment, delving into practices that would allow me to harness the latent power within me. I trained my mind, honed my focus, and tapped into a wellspring of energy that lay dormant within my being. I was no longer a passive victim. I was a force to be reckoned with. And then, one fateful night, they returned. I felt their presence, their probing intrusion. But this time, I was ready. With a surge of energy, I fought back, my mind a beacon of resistance that repelled their invasive influence. The room shook, the walls reverberating with a power that was both ancient and primal. And then, in a blinding flash of light, the room was empty. The beings banished from my presence. I was left standing, my heart pounding, my mind awash with a newfound sense of empowerment. But the twist in this tale is not one of triumph. It is a realization that the beings were not the enemy. They were the messengers, bearers of a dire warning that transcended time and space. As I delved deeper into my newfound abilities, I uncovered a prophecy of cosmic catastrophe, a cataclysmic event that threatened not just our world but the very fabric of existence. And so, as I stand on the precipice of destiny, I am faced with a choice that will determine the fate of all that is and all that ever will be. The interdimensional beings have given me a mission to avert the impending doom that looms on the horizon. The nightmarish abductions, the terrifying encounters. They were not acts of malice, but desperate attempts to communicate a truth that defies comprehension. And as I prepare to embark on a journey that will take me beyond the stars, I am left with a chilling feeling, a question that lingers in the air, a question that resonates in the depths of my very soul. Can I truly alter the course of destiny? Or am I merely a pawn in a cosmic game that has been unfolding since the dawn of time? There's only one way to find out. The wilderness has always held a peculiar allure for me. The untamed beauty, the whispering trees, and the promise of solitude. It was this fascination that led me to embark on a camping trip deep within the heart of a remote forest. Little did I know that this innocent excursion would spiral into a harrowing ordeal that defied all reason and logic. The sun had set, casting an inky blackness over the landscape. The crackling campfire was my sole source of comfort, its feeble glow dancing upon the surrounding trees. The symphony of nocturnal sounds filled the air, crickets chirping, leaves rustling, and an occasional hoot of an owl. As I settled into my tent, exhaustion crept over me like a heavy blanket. The night seemed to stretch infinitely, each passing hour bringing a growing unease that clung to my senses. I tossed and turned, the mysterious noises beyond the canvas walls heightening my anxiety. Just as I began to drift into an uneasy slumber, a haunting wail pierced the air, a sound that was neither animal nor human. My heart raced, my breath caught in my throat, and I lay frozen, paralyzed by a primal fear that gripped me with icy fingers. The wail was soon joined by a chorus of sinister whispers, their unintelligible words sending a shiver down my spine. My rational mind tried to dismiss them as mere tricks of the wind, but their persistence and urgency defied explanation. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around me,
with trepidation, I unzipped the tent and ventured outside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon of courage. The forest seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, the trees casting elongated shadows that writhed and contorted with a life of their own. As I navigated the underbrush, the whispers grew louder, their words a cacophony of gibberish that echoed in my ears. And then, in a clearing bathed in moonlight, I stumbled upon a sight that would forever haunt my nightmares. A lifeless body, its vacant eyes staring into eternity. The air grew thick with a suffocating tread, and a guttural growl emanated from the lifeless form before me. I staggered back in horror as the body twitched, its limbs convulsing with an unnatural fatality. It rose, its movements jagged and disjointed, like a marionette controlled by an invisible puppeteer. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding, my mind unable to comprehend the nightmarish tableau before me. The corpse turned its gaze toward me, its eyes now ablaze with an infernal fire that seared my soul. Its mouth opened in a silent scream, a maddening sound that reverberated within my mind. A feral instinct to survive took over, and I turned and fled, the creature's unearthly shriek echoing in my ears. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart threatening to burst from my chest as I sprinted through the forest, each shadow morphing into a lurking terror. Hours later, I collapsed at the edge of the forest, my body drained of strength, my mind consumed by an unrelenting terror. The rising sun brought a fragile sense of safety, but I knew that the horrors I had witnessed could not be dismissed as mere nightmares. In the days that followed, I sought answers, delving into ancient texts and local legends. The truth I uncovered was more horrifying than I could have imagined. An ancient demonic entity had cursed that forest, a malevolent force that fed on fear and death, manifesting in grotesque forms that torment those who dared to enter its domain. The twist in this tale, however, is a revelation that shook me to my core. The demonic entity was not the true antagonist. It was merely a guardian, a protector of a secret that had been buried beneath the forest for centuries. A secret that could alter the course of history itself. As I stand on the precipice of unveiling that secret, I am filled with a sense of foreboding, a realization that my discovery may unleash a force far more powerful and sinister than anything I've encountered before. The nightmarish events that unfolded in that cursed campsite were merely a prelude to a far greater darkness. A darkness that threatens to consume not only me, but all of humanity. And so, as I prepare to venture once again into the heart of the forest, I am left with a haunting question that lingers in the air. A question that chills me to my very core. Can I unravel the mysteries that lie hidden beneath the soil? Or will I become yet another victim of the malevolent forces that seek to protect them? There's only one way to find out. If I don't make another diary entry, then you can assume I'm dead. Whoever finds this, whoever hears this, I believe the curse has now been passed on to you.